Hello guys, welcome to DrNightStare. I know you guys come here to relax and take a nap. So before we go, please hit like and subscribe. By the way, also tell me what time and where you guys listening from. Alright then. Sarah knew that sound. The thin, high-pitched hum that would pierce the stillness when all other noise receded. It wasn't just a drone, it felt intentional. Like a whisper on the edge of hearing. It was a dreary October evening when Sarah was startled by a sharp rap against her patio door. She pulled her headphones down, thinking it was just the wind, but then it came again, louder this time. She stood, approaching the glass. Outside, illuminated by the porch light, stood a familiar silhouette. "Liam?" she murmured, pushing the heavy door open with a reluctant sigh. A chill immediately seeped into the warmth of her apartment. "What is it now?" she called out. "Let me in, Sarah. I've got to show you something." "It's almost 10, Liam," she protested. "Just a minute, I promise," his voice carried, edged with an unusual urgency. Liam wasted no time, settling onto the arm of her sofa. "It's supposed to let you hear God," he announced. Sarah blinked. "Whoa, slow down. What's this about the sound of silence?" she asked, utterly bewildered. "Okay, so there's this video. It's really obscure, not many views, but they say..." He paused, eyes darting around her living room as if listening for something only he could perceive. "Liam?" Sarah prompted, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Oh, right, sorry. It's this online thing, a trend. They call it the celestial frequency." Sarah raised an eyebrow, a skeptical smile playing on her lips. "The celestial frequency? Seriously?" Liam's gaze mirrored hers, his lips twitching into a forced smile. "So," she prompted. "Right, yeah." He fumbled in his coat pocket, eventually retrieving his phone. Sarah moved closer, and he angled the phone towards her. The display was a stark black, occasionally punctuated by faint, wispy gray lines that flickered like dying embers. A shiver traced its way down Sarah's spine as the sound began. A barely perceptible hum, a faint, distant drone. She leaned in, straining to catch it. The screen abruptly flashed white, and the video ended. I don't get it," Sarah said, squinting at him. "What do you mean?" Liam's face fell slightly. What was that supposed to be? The fine hairs on Sarah's arms stood on end. "You didn't hear it?" He offered a strained smile. Sarah let out an exasperated sigh. "Okay, very funny. I get it." She gave him a light shove and moved to her kitchen counter. "You really didn't hear anything?" His smile faltered completely. "Cut it out, Liam. I understand the joke. I'm serious, Sarah." He looked back at his phone, playing the video again. As he watched, he began to nod, his eyes darting from side to side as the low drone returned. He paused at mid-play, looking up at her with an unnerving intensity. "Maybe it's too noisy in here?" Their gazes held for a beat too long. "Where did you even find this video, anyway?" Sarah asked, a skeptical edge to her voice. Liam stood abruptly. "What about that old study upstairs? The one you said was always quiet?" Sarah let out a nervous laugh. "The dusty old room? Yes, that's it. It's got to be perfectly silent up there." "It would be. Perfect." His eyes scanned the living room again, a strange agitation about him. "This isn't really doing it for me, Liam." He recoiled slightly, a bewildered look on his face. "It's not scary. It's not supposed to be scary," he insisted, his voice tight. Sarah just stared at him, unnerved. Please, just trust me, Sarah. It's worth it." He pushed open her apartment door and stepped out into the hallway. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Sarah muttered, grabbing her keys and following him up the creaking stairs of the old building to her unused study on the 3rd floor. The room was mostly empty, smelling faintly of old books and forgotten dust, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. She flicked the switch, and the yellow light flickered to life. "No, the light has to be off," Liam insisted, turning to face her. "For, like, total sensory deprivation." "No way, Liam. That's creepy," Sarah laughed, a nervous edge to her voice, unsure if he was serious. He stared at her, an expectant silence hanging between them. "Absolutely not. It's too unsettling in the dark." Liam's annoyance was palpable. I already told you, it's not scary, it's just a silly video. I don't care, I don't even want to watch it, Sarah retorted, her patience wearing thin. You don't, what? He looked genuinely baffled, shifting his weight. Sarah's forced smile vanished, replaced by a firm expression. Please, Sarah, just... He gestured vaguely around the room, his eyes briefly snagging on a small, built-in storage cupboard near the wall before he continued. Trust me. It's a really short video you saw. Sarah let out a frustrated sigh, glancing from the light switch to Liam. He stood there, an unsettling eagerness in his posture. Gritting her teeth, she reached for the switch and plunged the room into darkness. Okay, sit. His voice came from the impenetrable black. Sarah fumbled her way to the old armchair and sat down. The phone screen abruptly lit up before her. She hadn't heard Liam move. Irritated, she stared at the familiar black screen, the tiny gray flecks dancing and flickering. As the video progressed, the abstract patterns began to solidify, forming intricate, unfamiliar shapes. The droning returned, no longer faint. It was a clear hum now, like the low, constant murmur of a distant machine. She could discern a melody within it. I think I hear something now, Sarah whispered. Liam offered no reply. The noise intensified, a distinct melody emerging. It sounded like a deep, resonant voice, humming a tune. The shapes on the screen became sharply geometric, the flickering flecks defining their intricate outlines, shifting and swirling with hypnotic speed. The humming grew louder, and Sarah found herself wondering if Liam was humming along. She couldn't tear her eyes from the screen. Her skin tingled, and a profound shiver coursed through her. Suddenly, the phone screen went dark, plunging Sarah back into absolute blackness and silence. Yet, she could still perceive the intricate shapes, burned into her vision like afterimages from a blinding light. Turn on the light, she managed, trying to push herself up, but her legs felt strangely heavy, as if she'd been immobile for hours. Liam, she called out, stumbling blindly towards the wall where she knew the light switch was. Her hand grazed the rough plaster as she frantically searched. Liam, this isn't funny, she muttered, a sudden chilling vulnerability washing over her in the oppressive dark. Her heart began to pound. Her fingers finally found the switch, and she flipped it. The bare bulb above flickered, then bathed the study in its stark yellow glow. Sarah spun around, scanning the room. It was empty. Liam? She called again, her voice thin and reedy. Her gaze landed on the built-in storage cupboard, its door slightly ajar. Seriously, Liam, come on. She approached it hesitantly, every instinct screaming at her to turn and flee. The humming began again, emanating distinctly from within the cupboard. Louder, clearer. Her hand closed around the cold metal doorknob. As she began to turn it, a thought, sharp and sudden as a shard of ice, pierced through her fear, freezing her in place. She had never, in her entire life, met a man named Liam. Officer Sarah Miller, an animal control officer in rural Willow Creek County, received an unusual call one summer night. Deputy Mark Thompson, a sheriff's deputy, contacted her directly, describing a bizarre cat making an ungodly racket. Miller, in her take-home vehicle, notified dispatch she was back on duty and heading to the address on Maple Drive for a welfare check. Arriving minutes later, she was surprised to find 4 deputies already present. They'd learned the homeowner was out of town, having left their cat in the garage with automatic feeders and water. Deciding against forced entry initially, Miller and the deputies opted to raise the garage door just enough for her to peer inside with her flashlight. What she saw defied explanation. It wasn't a domestic cat at all. It appeared to be a bobcat, but its face was grotesquely disfigured, sprouting what looked like writhing fungal tentacles. Miller's first instinct was to retreat, to simply report cat's fine and avoid the impossible explanation. But then, partially obscured by a couch, she saw it, what appeared to be a human foot. Uncertain if it was a real limb or a macabre decoration, Miller alerted the deputies. With the homeowner's prior permission for a welfare check, they decided to proceed. The garage door was lowered, and they made entry through a side door. Miller drew her taser, a chill running down her spine at the sight of the cat. The deputies moved in, weapons drawn, providing lethal cover. It was, undeniably, a human body. The creature had ravaged it, its internal organs seemingly consumed and replaced by the same unsettling tentacles that sprouted from its own face. The cat had retreated to a high shelf, its yellow eyes glowing eerily in the dim light, its form now framed by the pulsating tendrils. Their presence clearly agitated the creature. As one deputy cautiously approached, the tentacles on its face began to writhe and extend, elongating by several inches and curling like distorted fingers. When the creature suddenly leaped from the shelf, Miller, acting on instinct and terror, deployed her taser. The taser probes connected, but instead of a yowl, the creature let out an ear-splitting, distinctly human scream. The tentacles on its face unfurled further, revealing a gaping, toothless maw. The deputies reacted instantly, unleashing a barrage of gunfire. The creature, riddled with bullets, dropped, its unnatural life extinguished in an anticlimactic heap. Miller, an animal control officer not accustomed to homicide investigations, was left with the grim task. Donning nitrile gloves, she carefully placed the grotesque remains in a trash bag and, under the direction of the patrol sergeant, buried it 6 feet deep in a secluded section of the nearby woods. A formal use of force investigation never materialized. The sergeant apparently decided that tales of tentacled, fungus-infected creatures and their victims were best kept from public knowledge. Months passed, the bizarre incident fading into an unsettling memory. But yesterday, while checking a trap on an elderly gentleman's property near the county line, Miller saw it. Pushing up through the damp earth, unmistakable, was the same unsettling fungus. Arthur was a man of warmth and neighborly spirit, and when Lucas moved into the unit across the hall from his, he felt a familiar pang of empathy. Lucas, at first, appeared withdrawn, his demeanor suggesting a quiet discomfort, as if he hadn't yet found his footing. Arthur, recalling his own early days in the bustling Riverside apartments, decided to extend a welcoming hand, though he chose to observe for a couple of weeks first. After 2 weeks of quiet observation, Arthur approached Lucas's door, bearing a bottle of wine and a batch of his homemade chocolate chip cookies. There was no answer, which Arthur understood. Many people were wary of strangers. He penned a brief, "Welcome to the neighborhood" note, signed from "the guy across from you," and left the gifts on the welcome mat before retreating to his own apartment. The next day, Arthur found the wine and cookies gone. He hoped it was Lucas, not some opportunistic passerby. His hope was confirmed that evening. On his own welcome mat sat a bottle of the same wine, albeit larger, and a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies, accompanied by a note, "From the guy across from you." Arthur smiled, took the gifts inside, and indulged. Lucas's cookies were exquisite, so much so that Arthur, despite barely remembering Lucas's appearance, assumed he must be a baker. He popped the cork, poured a glass, and let the wine enhance the cookie experience. A glass or 3 in, a knock echoed at his door. Arthur peered through the peephole. Lucas stood on the other side, seemingly staring directly into the lens, as if aware he was being watched. Arthur, feeling the effects of the alcohol, slurred, "Well, howdy there, neighbor. How can I help you?" Lucas sported a wide, fixed smile that, even in Arthur's inebriated state, felt undeniably artificial. "Were you the one that left me the cookies?" Lucas asked. "Yes, actually. I hope you liked them. I absolutely loved yours." Lucas's smile widened further, and he rocked cartoonishly on his heels. They were a little burnt, but I'm thrilled you liked the ones I left." Arthur blinked, processing the words. "Burnt? Did you say burnt?" "Oh, it's nothing really. Just a little crispy around the edges. Nothing too bad." "No worries," Lucas replied with an unnerving sincerity that nonetheless left Arthur flushed with embarrassment. "Ah, dude, I'm sorry. I must have left him in the oven a tad bit too long," Arthur mumbled. Lucas waved a dismissive hand, as if to say no worries, and shook his head slowly. "No problem at all, dude." He spoke the last word with an odd, almost learned cadence. Lucas introduced himself, and Arthur, feeling bold from the wine, invited him in for a few drinks. Lucas accepted, and they settled at Arthur's kitchen bar, chatting for a while. Arthur found it peculiar that Lucas consistently refused a drink, despite the invitation being specifically for that purpose. Eventually, Arthur's head began to spin, signaling a losing battle with the alcohol. He had to ask Lucas to leave, anticipating an imminent date with his toilet. Lucas thanked him for the conversation and, to Arthur's surprise, pulled him into a long, tight hug. Arthur, unsure how to react, simply hugged him back. He ushered Lucas out and, after a miserable session over the toilet and a renewed vow of sobriety, collapsed into bed, instantly asleep. Arthur awoke the next morning to a silent robbery. Not cash or valuables, but his wardrobe. Half his clothes, along with several pairs of shoes, had vanished from his closet. His hangover throbbed, and he called out of work, citing the theft. The police arrived, offering a little help, as there were no signs of forced entry. Dozens of items simply gone without a trace, right under his nose. Arthur, too unwell to deal with it, dismissed them and returned to bed, promising to tackle the problem when his head was clearer. He reawakened in the late hours of the night, parched and sweating. Dragging himself to the kitchen for water, he noticed shadows dancing beneath his front door. Footsteps echoed from outside. Curious, Arthur peered through the peephole and recoiled. Pacing back and forth in front of his door was Lucas, wearing Arthur's favorite flannel shirt and black Nike Air Maxes. The same dirt stains, the same A stitched into the right breast pocket. Lucas stopped mid-stride, as if sensing he was watched, and slowly turned his head. His eyes, once a forgettable brown, now shone an electric blue, the exact shade for which Arthur often received compliments. Lucas's eyes widened, and that rancid smile stretched across his face as he turned fully towards the door. He raised a fist, knocking lightly. Arthur opened the door, frustration overriding caution. He knew Lucas had seen the police. He knew Lucas had been hiding. The door swung wide, revealing that same damn forced smile. "Howdy, neighbor," Lucas said. "How can I help ya?" Arthur stared, incredulous. Yeah, you're wearing my clothes. Those clothes and those shoes were just stolen, and I think you knew that. Look, just give them back, okay? I don't want to have to get the police involved again." Lucas's smile never wavered. "These? I'm sorry, you must be mistaken. I've had these for as long as I can remember. Someone stole your clothes? That's odd." Arthur knew it was a lie. Every fiber of his being screamed it. "Look, man," he replied, "I wanted to be nice, but I don't appreciate you lying to me. Just give me my clothes back, and we can pretend this never happened." Lucas didn't respond. He simply stood there, staring with those oceanic eyes. Minutes passed in silent examination. Lucas looked like he'd lost 15 pounds overnight, his body seemingly resculpted to fit Arthur's clothes. It unsettled Arthur's. Even more unsettling was Lucas's continued silence, just staring through him with that fake smile. "Okay, if you're going to be this way, I'm going to have to get the police involved," Arthur warned. For the first time, Lucas's smile dropped, morphing into a sickening scowl. "Okay," he said, mirroring Arthur's tone. "If you're going to be this way, I'm going to have to get the police involved." With that, Lucas turned, entering his own apartment, leaving Arthur alone in his doorway. Utterly confused and disturbed, Arthur slowly shut and locked his door. He didn't know why he hesitated to call the authorities immediately. Instead, he promised himself he'd do it in the morning, already having a suspect living right across the hall. With his lingering hangover, he fell back into bed. He awoke the next morning to aggressive pounding. "Northwood Police Department, open up!" a voice screamed. Groggily, Arthur rolled out of bed. On the other side stood two police officers beside Lucas, who had, once again, altered his appearance. His curly blonde hair was gone, replaced by straight brown hair, just like Arthur's. "Sir, we're going to need to search this apartment," one officer demanded. Arthur looked at Lucas, who stared back with the same scowl from the night before. You're going to need a warrant," Arthur responded smugly. The other officer raised a paper. "Here's your warrant right here. Lucas here has you on tape." "What? What? WHH? Okay, you guys must be confused," Arthur replied, his voice shaking. "I'm Arthur. I literally called you guys yesterday. This guy stole all my clothes. His name's Lucas. Lucas shook his head slowly, looking at the ground. He's delusional. He's been stealing my clothes and pretending to be me. Arthur was dumbstruck. No, we are not gonna do this. He gnaws that he's lying. An officer placed a hand on Arthur's chest, pushing him back, his other hand reaching for his holster. Sir, we're gonna need you to calm down. There's a simple way to figure this out. Let me ask you, do you have an ID? His ID. It should have been his first thought. Retrieving his wallet, Arthur handed it over without looking. The officers eyed the license, exchanging concerned glances. Sir, you're gonna need to let us inside. Come on, I literally just called you guys to report a break-in. How could you possibly be taking his side right now? Because this, the officer said, flashing Arthur his ID, this is not you. Arthur looked at the picture and was dismayed. They were right. It wasn't him. It was Lucas, but with Arthur's straight brown hair. Eye color, blue, weight, 49, born on 11/25/2003. Arthur's birthday. Yet, the name was still his own, Arthur Gaines, printed in bold black lettering beneath the photo. No, there has to be some kind of misunderstanding. So, you stole my wallet too? Lucas chirped. Arthur opened his mouth to scream, but the officers pushed past him, entering his apartment. They moved room to room, going through drawers, closets, and his bathroom, until one returned. All right, Mr. Thompson, I'm gonna need you to put your hands behind your back for me, all right? The other officer called from Arthur's bedroom. Yep, this looks like what Lucas reported missing. In his rage-fueled confusion, Arthur struggled against the officer, thrashing to escape. He was pushed to the ground, a knee in his back, as cuffs were forcefully latched around his wrists. Lucas stood over him, smiling. Arthur screamed that they were making a mistake, that he was Arthur, and it was his stuff. It was futile. He was placed in the back of a patrol car, still in his pajamas. At the station, after fingerprinting, they put him in a holding cell with genuine criminals. All right, Mr. Thompson, just turn to the side for me while I take your picture, the mugshot photographer said robotically. Wait, that's not my name, Arthur responded. Well, that's what your fingerprints say your name is. Did you have it changed? What, did someone steal your identity? She chuckled. Yes, they did. I'm not supposed to be here. I've told you all, over and over, that you're making a mistake. The woman didn't respond as expected. Instead, she began rattling off crimes Arthur hadn't committed. Says here that you spent 5 months in a neighboring state's correctional facility for alleged identity theft. Supposed to be 18, but you got out on good behavior? Couldn't keep up that behavior for long, though. Now could you? No. I've never spent a day in jail before in my life. Haven't heard that one before, she giggled. Her laughter fueled Arthur's anger. Oh, so you're just as fucking stupid as the other guys, huh? Her laughter stopped for a moment. I may be stupid, but I'm stupid and free. Praise Jesus. Can I get an amen? Now smile for the camera. I'll try to catch your good side. She snapped his picture. He was led to his cell, where he continued to plead his innocence to the guard. His cries fell on deaf ears, only succeeding in annoying the man. Finally, the guard snapped. We got you on tape, Lucas. There's nothing you can do to convince us that you don't belong here. Tape? I keep hearing about this tape. Can I at least see it? Can I at least know the reason you people are so confident in this? He was met with silence. Silence that cut through him, making his mind race as he sat amongst thugs and delinquents. Pacing his cell, Arthur splashed water on his face to calm himself. What he saw in the reflective metal mirror made him question his sanity. His eyes were now brown. Not only that, but his freckles seemed to be disappearing, and his hair had grown just a tad lighter. The wait for his hearing dragged on. As the days blurred, he noticed other unsettling changes, memories he didn't recall creating. Memories of crimes he hadn't committed, home invasion, armed robbery, shoplifting. They piled up in his mind, making his head throb. One memory was particularly hard to swallow, the vivid recollection of him entering his own closet, grabbing his clothes, and waltzing back into Lucas's apartment. On the day of his hearing, Arthur pleaded not guilty and was granted a jury. This was the day he finally saw the tape. The tape he'd heard so much about, the one keeping him from freedom while Lucas walked free. It revealed his worst nightmare. It was him. Arthur, rummaging around a room that was not his own, while Lucas slept peacefully in his bed. His mouth fell open against his will as a courtroom full of people watched him fill his arms with clothes and shoes before scurrying out of Lucas's bedroom. He had to have doctored the tapes, Arthur thought. Lucas had to be some kind of wizard with video editing, using his power against his poor neighbor who just wanted him to feel welcome. Who kept a security camera in their bedroom anyway? Imagine his surprise when the gavel fell, and he was sentenced to 14 months in prison for a crime he hadn't committed. His heart plummeted as the bailiff guided him out of the courtroom. He spent 6 months in that cell before receiving his first visitor. Not his mother, not his father, not his sibling or aunt or uncle. It was Lucas. Wearing the same exact clothes he had on the night Arthur had been arrested. He stared at Arthur through the glass. He had developed Arthur's freckles. He still had Arthur's blue eyes, still had Arthur's brown hair, and still wore that smile as he spoke his first words to Arthur in 6 months. Howdy, neighbor. The voice began softly, tender and loving, coaxing Ethan to open the cabin door. Pleasey, darling, it rasped, a sickening imitation of Sarah's voice. Open the door. Ethan's hand trembled as he cocked the hammer of his pistol, tears blurring his vision as he aimed at the sturdy wooden barrier. Why did it have to sound exactly like her? That beloved voice of his girlfriend, Sarah, before this monstrosity had stolen her away. He knew it was aware of his presence. There was no point in speaking. He could only stand, gripping the pistol tighter, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The door, darling. Open the door. The doorknob began to rattle violently, just as it had that horrific day in the clinic. It jiggled wildly while the mimic's voice continued its perverse plea from the other side. I love you, darling. Won't you open the door? The entire door now shuddered, vibrating intensely as the entity on the other side wrenched at the handle with terrifying force. Its voice grew steadily more monotonic, the loving facade crumbling with each passing second. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. The 3 words became a relentless chant as the creature strained to rip the door from its very frame. Ethan watched in horror as the wood warped and bowed inwards with each powerful shove, the hinges screeching in protest with every impact. With a final, guttural, open the door, screamed in a voice as dark as sin itself, the door exploded inwards. The creature stepped into the small living area. Its massive antlers scraped against the doorframe, then the low ceiling, as it unfolded to its full height, easily 7 feet tall. Where eyes should have been, only abyssal black holes stared back, swallowing Ethan in their terrifying gaze. My poor, poor Sarah. I'm so sorry, darling. Wherever you may be, I pray you can forgive me, he thought, tears streaming down his face. He raised the pistol, aiming at the creature's grotesque visage. He held no illusions of killing it. In that desperate moment, he yearned for it to kill him instead, to silence the torturous thoughts of how this nightmare had begun, of Sarah's unimaginable terror when this thing had claimed her. The creature lowered its head slightly, a mocking bow. The dark holes Ethan presumed were nostrils flared as it inhaled, scenting the air. I'm so sorry, Sarah, he whispered, his finger tightening on the trigger. Ethan wasn't sure what to expect, or what would follow the discharge of his weapon. The gunshot was deafening, yet the creature's subsequent shriek of agony made the blast seem meek in comparison. It lashed out, its claws tearing through the fabric of his shirt and carving 5 deep gouges across his chest as it recoiled. The attack was a blur of motion. One moment the towering beast was before him, the next it was gone, its hooves clattering against the cabin's wooden floorboards as it fled down the short flight of stairs. He heard glass shatter, then silence. Ethan was utterly terrified, petrified. He couldn't move, rooted to the spot, shaking uncontrollably as blood seeped from his chest, soaking his shirt and pants. For what felt like an eternity, perhaps 20 or 30 minutes, he remained frozen in the oppressive silence before finally forcing himself to leave the bedroom. Cautiously, he scouted the small cabin, pistol still clutched in hand, as he made his way to the front door. There was no sign of the creature. However, the glass panel of his front door had been utterly annihilated. Shards of glass glittered across the porch, and splintered wood hung precariously from the ruined doorframe. His only thought was to reach the hospital. Weakness washed over him, and a searing pain burned in his chest. Pistol still gripped tight, he stepped out through the gaping hole where his door had been and moved carefully towards his car. The creature remained unseen, yet the chilling sensation of being watched clung to him. He started his car and sped away from the isolated cabin. He raced to the nearest regional hospital, abandoning his vehicle in the patient pickup zone, and stumbled inside. The doctors who saw him looked as if they were staring at a ghost. The last sensation Ethan remembered was a desperate gasp for help before he collapsed onto the sterile tiled floor. Ethan awoke in a hospital bed, tubes running from his arm to an IV bag, and another of O-negative blood steadily infusing into his veins. It took him a moment to recall his surroundings, but the doctor standing in the corner with a clipboard quickly refreshed his memory. "Well, good morning, Mr. Thorne," she announced cheerfully. "Good to see you've decided to rejoin the land of the living." Ethan instinctively rolled his eyes and lifted a hand to his throbbing head, hoping to alleviate the fierce migraine pounding behind his temples. Whoa, easy now," the doctor cautioned. "You don't want to bend those needles in your arm. That would be quite painful. But then again, it looks like you've already experienced the worst kind of pain imaginable. You're incredibly lucky we were able to save you. You'd lost a critical amount of blood by the time you arrived." Ethan glanced down at his chest, finding the 5 claw marks meticulously stitched, promising a set of gruesome scars for his future grandchildren. "So, we didn't really get the chance to ask you when you came in. What happened, boss? Looks like something tore you up pretty badly." Unsure how to explain the truth, Ethan offered the most plausible lie he could conjure. "Bobcat shot the thing, but I think I missed. It bolted into the Blackwood Peaks at the sound of the gun, though not before leaving me with these." The doctor regarded him blankly for a moment, as if she could see right through his fabrication. "A bobcat, huh? Well, if that's the case, you should be thanking your lucky stars you made it here. Those animals rarely leave their prey alive." Ethan had no response, so he remained silent. "Tell you what," she continued, "you rest here for a bit, and we'll get you back to your cabin as soon as you're able. How does that sound?" Ethan affirmed it sounded perfectly fine, and she left the room, granting him a fragile peace. Ethan found it peculiar that he felt no pain from the claw marks on his chest, nor from the old scratch on his leg from the night the creature had first visited. The only discomfort was the headache, which seemed to intensify with each passing moment. Hoping to sleep away the migraine, he closed his eyes and drifted back into unconsciousness. His dreams were intense, so vivid that his screams roused the doctor, who rushed in to wake him. He was drenched in sweat, shivering uncontrollably. "Whoa there, Mr. Thorne, are you all right?" she asked, gently easing him back onto the pillows. "Dreaming of bobcats again?" "Yeah, something like that," Ethan mumbled. In truth, he dreamt of Sarah, of how the creature had taken her and was now twisting her image to torment him. He dreamt it stalked him, watching him sleep, whispering for him to venture outside and join it in the depths of the Blackwood Peaks. Apparently, he had slept through an entire day, and it was now the morning after. "I think you're well enough to go home," the doctor said, "but I'll be generous. I'll prescribe some low-dosage sleep medication. You'll be sleeping like a rock, no more of those pesky bobcat dreams." Ethan thanked her as she removed the remaining tubes from his arm, but he knew he wouldn't be filling that prescription. Not when he had to remain constantly vigilant. Instead, once discharged, Ethan drove straight back to his cabin, determined to pack his belongings and flee the area. As he approached, his guard immediately returned. He entered the defiled home, pistol once more in hand, to find the entire place completely ransacked. Pictures were torn from the walls and scattered across the floor, the bed and sofa savagely ripped open, their stuffing strewn about wildly. It looked as if a truly ferocious animal, or perhaps a localized tornado, had torn through his life. But this destruction didn't concern him. he was ready to abandon it all. He hastily packed only his clothes and essential items, leaving the ruined cabin behind without a backward glance. As he drove away from the small mountain town, Ethan felt his face flush with a feverish heat. The illness grew so intense that he eventually found himself unable to drive. He pulled over at a desolate rest stop, cold sweat beading on his forehead as he stumbled into the convenience store. He was assailed by what could only be described as voices in his head. Angry voices, speaking in a language he couldn't possibly comprehend. Their unintelligibility fueled a growing, violent rage within him. The cacophony intensified as he tried in vain to compose himself. He found himself consumed by fury, growling under his breath as he forced himself back towards his car, the convenience store clerk staring after him in horror. He considered returning to the hospital, convinced this transformation was unnatural, demanding immediate medical attention. Yet, as he reached his vehicle, the overwhelming anger climaxed, and he lost consciousness. Ethan awoke in a forest, deep within the Blackwood Peaks, though he couldn't say exactly where. An unnerving silence enveloped him. No birdsong, no scurrying squirrels, no rustling leaves, nothing but an oppressive quiet. His clothes had been shredded, not by an animal, but as if stretched beyond their capacity until the fabric tore under immense pressure. Disoriented and exposed to the rapidly cooling air, he watched the sun begin to set, utterly lost. He chose a random direction and began to walk, hoping to find some sign of civilization. Ethan must have walked for hours. The sun had long vanished, leaving him in oppressive darkness as he pressed onward. Throughout his journey, the eerie silence of the forest had remained unbroken. But now, he heard leaves crunching behind him. He spun around, finding nothing. Of course. Not even a small creature. He picked up his exhausted pace, marching deeper and deeper, by now convinced he was moving away from any hope of civilization. He took 2 more steps, then froze. A familiar voice echoed from behind him. "Welcome home, darling." He didn't turn at first. But as the voice drew nearer, a chilling certainty settled upon him. He had to face it. "Just look at me, darling. I won't hurt you again. I won't hurt you again. I promise." He felt the familiar surge of anger, his face growing hot once more. Furiously, he spun on his heel to confront the voice and was met by Sarah. Instantly, his rage dissolved, and a twisted sense of understanding flooded him as they embraced. "I missed you so much," she cooed. "This can be our new home. This is where we can always have each other." Her smile tore at his soul. Her face, God, her face. It felt like an eternity since he'd seen it. He began to speak, but she silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Oh, darling, it's okay. You don't need to say anything. Just stay here with me." He pulled her tighter, feeling her bones begin to shift and alter beneath his grasp. "Just stay here with me. Just stay here with me. Just stay here with me." That was her only refrain. Against his will, Ethan succumbed. The fever returned, but now he welcomed its warmth. The anger resurfaced, but this time, it felt like a burgeoning power. He blacked out again. When he awoke, he was completely nude. Yet, what truly seized his attention was the blood. The taste of flesh clung between his teeth, wedged there like a splinter in old wood. He was drenched in the crimson liquid, its warmth a strange comfort against the cold early morning air. Sarah was nowhere to be found. But a chilling certainty settled in Ethan's newfound awareness. He would see her again in their new home. Ilara adored Caleb. He was the epitome of charm, a thoughtful partner who remembered her favorite tea and always had a captivating tale from his work at the town library. Her friends often remarked he was like a character from a romance novel, and their approval only deepened Ilara's affection. Yet, beneath the surface of their idyllic life in the secluded lakeside cottage, a chilling suspicion had begun to take root. What started as a flicker of doubt had grown into an undeniable dread. She'd observed him poring over obscure volumes. Not the usual literary fare, but treatises on forensic science, wilderness survival, and the chilling art of disappearing without a trace. Once, she'd stumbled upon a collection of old hiking journals he kept hidden, their worn pages marred by dark, crusted stains that looked suspiciously like dried blood. And then there were the local whispers, the unsettling news reports of hikers vanishing from the nearby trails, leaving no discernible trace. Her intuition screamed, a silent siren warning her of imminent danger. But what could she tell the authorities? That her beloved, gentle librarian was reading true crime, that some old books had stains. They'd dismiss her as paranoid, especially given Caleb's impeccable reputation in their small community. She needed something more, something concrete. Driven by a sudden, frantic urgency, Alara began to meticulously search the cottage. Every cupboard, every forgotten drawer, every nook and cranny was scrutinized. She found nothing that screamed guilty. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a memory surfaced. Caleb's insistent words echoing in her mind. "There's an old cedar chest tucked under our bed, Alara," he'd told her repeatedly, his voice unusually stern. "It holds very personal family keepsakes. Please, darling, respect my privacy and never attempt to open it. It means a great deal to me." Her heart hammering, Alara scrambled to the bedroom and dragged out the weathered chest. A peculiar lock, requiring a numerical code, glinted at her. Her anniversary? Too sentimental for the monster her gut told her he was. A birthday? Unlikely. If he was truly capable of such darkness, and took pride in his atrocities, the code would be a twisted homage to his craft. The date of the first disappearance that had plagued their valley. October 17th, 2021. Her fingers trembled as she entered the digits. A soft click, and the lid sprang open. Her breath hitched. Inside lay meticulously kept journals, filled with chillingly detailed schematics of traps and burial sites, eloquent passages describing the euphoric thrill of the hunt, and a collection of personal effects. A faded compass, a distinctive hiking boot, a tarnished silver locket, objects unmistakably belonging to the missing. The initial surge of vindication withered, replaced by a wave of nauseating horror. A raw, guttural scream tore from Alara's throat, tears streaming down her face as the grim truth solidified. She had to call the authorities immediately. Caleb would be home any moment. As her fingers instinctively brushed away her tears, preparing to bolt from the room, a deep voice sliced through the silence. "Not running off just yet, are we, my love? I distinctly recall telling you that Cedar Chest was off limits." Alara whirled around, her blood turning to ice. "Caleb, I can explain." A cold, hard frown settled on his handsome face. "No," he simply stated, his eyes devoid of warmth, as he took a slow, deliberate step toward her. Robert Miller didn't want to kill his wife. The incessant nagging, the ceaseless chatter, the subtle hints of the neighbor having been over by the time he got off work. His neighbor Mark was always overtly friendly to Sarah. Little glances and looks, a hand around her waist as she walked by, gifts no neighborly friend would naturally give. But still, Robert Miller didn't want to kill his wife. That's what he told himself from 6:30 a.m. until he got off at 3:30 p.m. That's what he told himself on the drive home. That's what he told himself while eating bland, tasteless dinners. But he could. She often went off to a distant province to see her mother for long stretches. Homesick, she'd say. She was often in the hospital for lengthy, draining amounts of time. Thank goodness she was, or they would have had children by now. God kept Robert Miller from that particular pain through Sarah's awful genetics. Her disappearing for a bit wouldn't be noticed. He'd finally have some peace, he thought. A backyard fire and a couple of cleanings, and she'd be gone. Eventually enough time would pass, and he'd have to answer for her whereabouts. He often pondered crossing that bridge when he got there. A blaze of glory, a gunfight, a Clyde with his bitch Bonnie out of the picture. But he couldn't. So, when he went to work on this beautiful summer day, he just played through the movie in his head of a few months of peace, imagining it was almost as good as having it. Zoning out on the drive, barely remembering the stops and turns, until he hit him. Some poor bastard in the early morning hours, probably sobering up from a long night hitting the taverns. Practically jumped off the sidewalk into Robert's rust-eaten hatchback's path, is how he'd later remember it. Robert slammed the brakes. A man rolled over the hood, splintered the windshield, then came to rest on the roof of the old sedan. A groan. Then the man rolled off and slammed into the cold black asphalt. "Holy hell," Robert said as tears filled his eyes. "What the freaking heck?" He got out of the car as quick as he could, ran around to the man on the ground. He was wearing shorts and a hoodie, missing teeth from before the accident, Robert assumed, and looked dirty and grimy. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. He was curled up, clutching his stomach. "Jesus Christ, are you okay?" Robert said, kneeling and putting his hands on the man's shoulder. The streets were dead and empty, as they should be at 5046 in the morning. "What the hell are you doing out here?" The man just groaned. Across the street were the sidewalks and roads leading into the soon-to-be bustling city center, but they were still on the sleepy suburban street. The sidewalk the man had leapt from connected to the deep, whispering woods that led God knows where. The dirt and grime on him suggested he'd stumbled out of them. Robert remembered briefly seeing the man walking unsteadily, like a newborn deer who hadn't learned what his limbs were capable of. Robert thought he was just a homeless drunk, until the man spoke. "This hurts. It hurts. Oh God, it hurts. Oh God, it hurts." His voice shifted as he spoke. Sometimes human and broken, sometimes deep and ancient, wrong, inhuman. Robert watched him writhe and noticed that sometimes the man's eyes would cloud over, all pain leaving them, a dead stare while the body still recoiled. The lucidity would return, then slip away again. Suddenly it came back and the man grabbed Robert's shoulders, pulling him close. "What the heck is happening?" Robert screamed. "That thing bit me. It hurts. It hurts." "What the heck are you talking about? You jumped in front of my car." "I had to. The woods. The antlers on something. It hurts. It's in me. Moving me." Robert's mind raced. Trauma. Shock. Dying. Blood. Jail. Lawsuits. Therapy. The blank stare washed over the man's face again. "You can do it," the man said, more from his throat than his mouth. A guttural growl. "What?" "Kill her and have a bonfire." "What the heck are you talking about, Sarah?" Robert fell backward, hit the asphalt, scrambled to his feet. The man's eyes cleared again. "Kill me," he said. "Kill me, please." Robert took another step back. "It's in me. It hurts." It seized through my eyes. Then came the gurgling. The man convulsed, choking, trying to swallow his tongue. Robert remembered something about seizures in wallets and mouths, but his body wouldn't move. He stood frozen, crying without realizing it. The gurgling stopped. The man lay still. Robert collapsed onto the asphalt again, gasping. No one had appeared. No cars. No witnesses. Minutes passed. Then the man moved. Robert jumped to his feet, hand over his mouth, small yelps escaping him. Bones cracked and twisted. Elbows bent the wrong way. Legs planted. Hands pressed into the road, lifting the body from its broken shape. The man arched into a backbend, eyes grayed over, head pointed straight up. Then he began to move, walking, crawling, something else, dragging himself toward the forest. At the tree line it stopped. The man's head twisted impossibly until his eyes met Robert's. "Kill Sarah, Robert." Then it scuttled into the shadows. Robert Miller was late for work. Leo had dreamt of flight since he was a small boy, imagining himself soaring through the clouds. So, when a special seminar called Aerospace Engineering Principles, Guiding Future Aviators to Their Destiny, was announced, he felt an immediate pull. It was held in the old observatory building on campus, nestled high on a hill, requiring a long climb up winding paths. But for Leo, reaching that elevation felt like touching the sky itself, a deliberate choice by the organizers. Professor Albright greeted them with a warm, encouraging smile. "You must be Leo, correct? Take any seat you like." Leo nodded eagerly, claiming the front row. 3 other students were scattered around the room. Oscar Thorne, who seemed to be attending solely for extra credit, judging by his perpetual dozing. Maya Reed, whose attention was clearly fixed on the handsome, mid-30s professor rather than the lesson, sitting upright and eager to answer every question, and Sam Miller, who appeared perpetually bewildered by the entire subject. Leo attended every session, even making special trips to Professor Albright's secluded workshop deep in the woods to admire his intricate models. Halfway through the semester, Professor Albright turned to the dwindling group. "Can anyone tell me what the most crucial component of an aircraft is?" Maya's hand shot up. The engine?" Professor Albright smiled gently. "A good guess, Maya, but no. Any other ideas?" "I don't know, man," Sam grumbled, rubbing his head. "Maybe the nose cone?" "Also a valid thought, Sam, but not the one I'm looking for." "Well, what is it then?" Maya pressed, her brow furrowing. "The landing gear?" "The fuel tanks," Sam whispered, and Maya playfully tossed a crumpled paper ball at him. Leo sat up straight, a surge of certainty flowing through him. It's the damn pilot, obviously." Oscar Thorne's sleepy mumble came from the back. He lifted his head, his eyes unfocused, fixed on the professor. "The most important part of an aircraft is the pilot," he reiterated, his voice a gravelly drone, "since they're actually flying the plane." Professor Albright's lips spread into a wide, approving grin. "That's precisely correct, Oscar. The pilot is absolutely vital. Without them, the aircraft cannot take off. It has no life, no purpose. It is essentially," he began to pace between their desks. A pen twirling between his fingers, lifeless. His expression subtly darkened. An empty shell of wings and instruments, all these wonderful systems, and yet, without a pilot, it is nothing. Sam chuckled nervously. "Wow," he murmured. "That's pretty profound, Professor." Professor Albright nodded, his smile returning. "Indeed it," he agreed. "Now, who among you truly wishes to become a pilot?" Leo shot his hand into the air, but he was the only one. Oscar merely rolled his eyes and slumped back into his nap. Sam shrugged. "I'm good, thanks," he grinned. "I'm terrified of flying." Maya twisted in her seat, glaring at him. "Then why are you even here?" He smirked, avoiding her gaze. "Same reason as you." "Same reason as you." Professor Albright seemed thoroughly unimpressed. He ended the class early, ushering them out. The only student he offered a genuine smile to was Leo. "Wait." He paused Maya, Oscar, and Sam at the door. "Stay for a moment. We need to discuss your future in this seminar." The next day, Leo arrived, a little winded from the climb, to a locked observatory door. He had half expected it. Of course, the professor would cancel it. He was the only serious student. He tried again the following day, hoping for a change, but the door remained stubbornly shut. Sam joined him after another week had passed. "Have you seen Maya?" he asked, looking around. "She owes me $5 for coffee." Another week went by, and Sam stopped coming to the observatory. Assuming Professor Albright might be ill, Leo decided to pay him a visit. He took a bus deep into the woods, following a narrow, overgrown track until he reached the professor's secluded workshop, a massive, imposing structure that seemed to tower over the trees. Professor Albright looked genuinely surprised to see him. "Leo," he said, folding his arms, "what can I do for you?" Leo smiled, already picturing the professor's model planes. "Can I come in?" he asked. "I saw the seminar was canceled, but I really enjoy your class." Professor Albright interrupted him. "Leo, I don't think that's a good idea. I canceled the seminar because no one truly wanted to be there." Leo nodded, still itching to see the models. "Could I use your restroom?" he asked. Professor Albright's lip curled slightly, and Leo quickly added, "I feel a bit unwell." Professor Albright nodded and directed him to a door, but Leo didn't go to the restroom. Giddy with a mixture of excitement and unease, he hurried down a hidden staircase he knew led to a sub-level laboratory where he suspected the more intricate models were kept. "Hello?" Leo froze at the threshold of the hidden lab, his heart hammering. "Leo, is that you? Is that you?" "Sam." Leo stumbled down the last few steps, frantically scanning the shadows for his classmate. Instead, he found himself face to face with three towering, robotic-looking structures, gleaming crimson, emerald, and azure. They were magnificent, terrifying. He stepped forward before he could stop himself and laid a trembling hand on the crimson one. "Whoa, Lee, oh, The voice made him jump, a wheezy, mechanical wail. Leo, what's going on? It was all Sam, but Leo couldn't see him. Something cold slithered down his spine. He touched the metallic structure again, and this time it lit up from within. Leo. Maya's voice slammed into him, distorted, mechanical. Leo, I can't see anything. Leo found his voice, stumbling back. Sam, Maya, where are you? I don't know. Sam's voice had a mechanical edge now, cracking into a sob. I came here to see Professor Albright, and I can't. And then Leo saw the blood. Smeared on the polished floor, collected in buckets hidden behind a partition, bright scarlet spilling over the rim. Leo? The crimson structure illuminated, and Leo threw up all over himself. Leo, help me. Maya's cry rattled through him. Yes, I can't see anything. It's so cold. Yes, what did I say, Leo? Professor Albright's voice boomed from behind him. Leo turned around, dizzy, his head spinning, while the mechanical wails of his two classmates slammed into him. A craft, Professor Albright said, stepping into the light. A chilling smile twisted his lips as he admired his gruesome work. Is nothing without its pilot. Leo ambled through the weathered doors of the Midnight Lantern. It was 10:15, the air outside brisk and unforgiving. A haphazard chalk sign announced, Open Mic Night, in faded script, promising a night of varied entertainment. Inside, the tavern pulsed with a boisterous crowd. A struggling comedian on a small corner stage wrestled with a joke about local politics, his efforts bolstered more by the flowing ale than any genuine humor. Leo found a bartender sporting a t-shirt that declared, Inhale if you're horny. He managed to flag him down. Got any coffee? You're the second one tonight, the bartender grumbled, pouring a dark liquid into a flimsy styrofoam cup. He slid it across the worn counter. $6. For coffee? Leo frowned. Coffee drinkers never tip worth a damn, so it's all up front. The crude grammar confirmed the bartender's hand in the sign outside. Leo handed over the money, leaving him with a paltry 10.87. The bar was packed, and the thought of returning to the freezing night was unappealing. He navigated the smoky haze, searching for an open spot. His gaze landed on a small table with a single vacant chair. A petite woman sat alone, enveloped in a long, dark trench coat with its collar turned up. Her black hair cascaded to her shoulders. Ratty, fingerless white gloves cupped a styrofoam cup, much like his own. A leather-bound journal lay before her, its cover emblazoned with verses for sale. The comedian mercifully concluded his set to a lukewarm round of applause as Leo approached the table. Excuse me, he began. She looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly. Mind if I join you? Her gaze swept over him, lingering on the guitar case slung over his shoulder. Depends. On what? Do you perform? If you can call it that, Leo replied. She scrutinized him again, then pushed the empty chair out with her foot. Much obliged. You aren't supposed to be here. I'm not? She trailed off, her gaze meeting his. I'm Clara. Leo. Are you here to play? Not tonight. Just got in from Pine Ridge on the train. The roads are slick out there. Didn't drive, Leo confirmed. A slow smile spread across her face, lighting up her features. Are you a traveling troubadour, then? Something like that. He noticed a delicately drawn lily on her journal cover. Are you here to recite a poem? Something like that. They talked, the raucous tavern fading into a distant hum. Clara revealed she hailed from Willow Marsh. Leo spoke of his wandering existence from a town called Whisper Creek. Both were simply passing through. She asked him to play something for her, and he promised he would if she'd share a poem. A local trio was currently butchering Sweet Home, Alabama. Leo was captivated. Clara had a strange, compelling power. He confessed his nomadic life, his constant movement. When she asked why, he laid bare the truth. Everything feels false when I stand still. Only when I'm moving do I feel real. No one seems real anymore. so I keep moving. I don't know if that makes any sense. It does, she affirmed. Just observe everyone in this room. You can see it in their eyes, nothing behind them, all pretense and deceit. If they ever heard genuine truth, she paused, then met his gaze. You, Leo, you seem real to me. I'm certain you'll eventually find a place that makes you want to settle down. Perhaps. I need to tell you something true, Clara said, a hint of worry in her eyes. I came here for a specific reason tonight. I have a task to perform. What, are you going to blast the place apart? Leo joked. She glanced down at her journal. Something like that. The desecration of the classic rock anthem finally ended, and Clara rose from her seat. Leo, just trust me. Don't be afraid. When you hear it, I know you'll be all right. Hear what? True words. She turned and walked towards the small stage. Several drunken voices demanded the beatnik, get lost. Clara flipped through the pages of her journal, settling on a particular entry. A few plastic cups of beer arced through the air towards the stage, and then it began. Or stopped. Clara spoke her truth. Everything in the tavern seemed to slow. The beer-filled cups moving towards the stage almost froze mid-air. The entire bar began to stir in agonizing slow motion. Clara's voice resonated in Leo's mind, felt more than heard. A strange stillness settled over him, an unfamiliar desire to remain unmoving. For the first time, he wanted to be still. She continued her recitation, her gaze lifting from her journal to meet his across the room. Those eyes. He stood and walked forward, unburdened by the lethargic spell that had gripped the crowd. A different enchantment had fallen upon him. The whole room was rising to their feet, emitting drawn-out moans of pain and agony. They clutched at their clothing. Their bodies slowly plumped up, as if inflated by an unseen air compressor. Faces distorted, eyes bulged, shirts and blouses ripped thread by agonizing thread. Leo walked beneath the hovering cups, the beer within them suspended like a sluggish stream. Clara kept speaking, her eyes fixed on him. He stepped onto the stage. A low rumble filled the room. The crowd exploded behind him at a glacial pace, a gruesome, kaleidoscopic spectacle of gore. Limbs and viscera were slowly torn asunder. Clara finished her words, and Leo wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. That was quite a poem, he said, looking back at the chaotic, bloody tableau, which might as well have been in zero gravity. I was wondering something, though. What? Think we could set your words to a guitar? Something like that, she replied, and smiled.